again, want to thank you for being able to do this interview for us for our Authors Festival.
It's my
This is we're doing a virtual Authors Festival. So I want to introduce a very special guest, and that is Claudia Christian. She has been a part of many different things, film, TV, video games, animation, and as well as an author. So we're just very grateful to have her here to just say a few words to us. So thank you, Claudia.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I'm just going to start by just kind of asking you a few questions here and there.
Sure.
Let's talk about how you got started in TV.
Well, I was very determined. I started acting as a young girl on stage, and I felt very at home. I was kind of a shy kid, so it helped me communicate in a more friendly way, I suppose, and express myself. And then my father was transferred to California when I was 14 years old, and I took that sort of as a sign that I should now try to be on TV. So yeah, well, you know, when you're that young and your vision and your determination is so myopic, and I think when you have not really experienced defeat or rejection, then you are blissfully unaware of the challenges that you might meet. So I was just utterly convinced that we were moving to California so I could get a TV series. And,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, it just made sense to me. It was like, I want to be an actress. I want to be on television. So now that we're moving to California, this will happen. And it was so funny because it did happen, but I left high school early. I graduated early. I compressed 4 years into 2.5.
Wow.
I worked many, many jobs. I modeled. I saved up enough money to move to Los Angeles. And I found a manager who signed me, who was a very successful woman, who had lots of big clients on TV, and she signed me. I don't know why, but she saw something in me. I just, I hate to say it, but I wrote a monologue, and I went up to her office and I performed this monologue. I brought a violin with me. I did this whole thing. I don't even remember, but she signed me to a 3-year contract. The next thing you knew, I was going around meeting casting directors, and by the time I turned 18, I had a job.
Wow.
On Dallas. And then from Dallas, I did Falcon Crest. And then I got an audition for a series called Behringer's, and I booked it. So I had my first TV series when I was 18.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was quite a remarkable journey. And when I think about it now, how blessed I was to be working in the 1980s when there was certainly competition, but literally there were the same 10 girls going up for all the roles. I mean, we were all the same age. I ran into them. I worked with them. They either went with a blonde, a redhead, or a brunette back in those days. And that was really kind of that's the flavor they chose. Nowadays, of course, it's far more complex and competitive. And quite often I lose my jobs to men or people of color because they just bring in everybody, transgender, gender fluid, so right. So it's far more competition. But for 25 years or so, I had the good luck to work in an environment where it was just a blonde or a brunette. So I worked a lot, which I'm grateful for.
What kind of influenced you to really want to get into that? Like, was there a TV show or something that you saw that really influenced you to move towards acting?
To want to be an actress? Definitely. It was Christy McNichol in all of the after school specials, and it was Melissa Gilbert in as Half Pint in Little House on the Prairie. And I thought, if these girls can do it, so can I, because they were age appropriate for me. We were around the same age. I think those ladies are maybe a couple of years older than me. And so here I am, a 10-year-old watching a 12-year-old act, or a 12-year-old watching a 14-year-old, thinking, okay, I can relate to that. If they're working, then there's no reason why I shouldn't be on TV too.
Yeah, that's a great attitude.
Yeah, I had a very limited amount of television allocated to me per week. My parents were quite strict about it, so I was allowed to watch 60 Minutes or Little House on the Prairie. And I obviously chose Little House on the Prairie. Yeah, we
choice, though.
were more about books in my house, which is why this interview is appropriate. I was a mad reader as a child, so much more into books than I was television or film. But I wanted to work in TV. I don't know why. It just is something I was like, that's the job I want. And here I am, 40 years later after starting my career, and 38 years later, and I still want to work in television. I love it.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's good to do something you love.
Yeah.
So how did you end up in Babylon 5?
I just auditioned like everybody else would do, and they offered me the role, and I was a little hesitant because I nobody really believed that a sci-fi show other than a Star Trek spinoff would do well. So, and I had done some films at the time, a couple studio pictures, so I was looking more towards a film career. And then I loved the character of Ivanova so much that I said, I could do this. I could really get into this role. I just loved her immediately. They showed me 3 scripts, and I just saw something in her that I thought was very tough and vulnerable, and so yeah, I took it.
So when you found out you got Babylon 5 and you said you were hesitant, what was really the biggest hesitation about that?
Just committing to 5 years of your life when you're 28 years old. I mean, I thought 5 years I could be, I just come off a Warner Brothers feature and, a Columbia Films feature. And I thought, 5 years in a tiny studio in Sun Valley for a sci-fi show that, is not a Star Trek spinoff. No, but sci-fi was not popular back in the 90s.
Right.
It really wasn't in America. I mean, in England, it was certainly popular. We were on Friday and Saturday nights in England.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Wow. Babylon 5 was the featured show at 8 p.m. I mean, we had a great time slot. And here in California, Babylon 5 was constantly interrupted by basketball games. My parents they thought I was lying. Like, you're not on TV. We've never even heard of this show. My mom at the time lived in Colorado, and it would air at 2 a.m., so she never could see it. And so everyone said, Babylon what? I mean, we became successful from the power of genre fans, not for any other reason. And because the writing was great and the acting was great, and the storyline was intriguing to people, and we tackled big subjects, that's why we became popular, because it was a good show, but not because anybody featured us at a normal hour to even watch. I had people that were trading tapes, going overseas, Marines and Army members, and all these people, guys and gals in the military, saying that they were, literally like trading off beta tapes of Babylon 5 because they couldn't watch it anywhere. It was that was the 90s for you.
Well, I feel fortunate then, because I was actually able to see it at a decent hour.
Yeah, well, you're one of the few. When it first originally came out, I never even saw it. I mean, I'd come home and it was interrupted by a basketball game, or I was still working, and so I just never really knew that people liked it until I went to England. When I did the very first convention in Blackpool, England, it was like being a Beatle.
Oh, wow.
The hysteria and the lines and the excitement was like being a rock star. Seriously, it was out of this world.
Well, I'm glad you got to experience that, because it really was a great show. I know I enjoyed it. I had to tune in every week to see what was going to happen next. It was very compelling.
Yep, sure was.
So speaking of working in film, especially on a show like Babylon 5, what was the experience like on a day-to-day basis?
People have this idea of glamour or whatever, but it's not. But there's a comfort level there that I like. You get up early, you put your stuff in your room, and then you go to makeup. That's the first thing you do. So the first people you see are the hair and makeup people. And that energy is usually soft and nice, and it's early in the morning, and everyone has their coffee, and you're, shooting a breeze. And nowadays it's hard because everybody's masked up and paranoid, but because of COVID, but still there's a warm environment. And then after that, you you do what's called a walkthrough, and you block the scene. And the blocking rehearsal is what you do next, and that's so that the crew can light the scene. So you have the entire crew watching this. First you block it with the director and the other actors, then the crew comes in and looks at where you're going to be, and then then you disappear and go for touch-ups, and you put your wardrobe on, and then the crew lights the set. And that can take anywhere from, well, could take an hour to a lot longer.
Wow.
And then after that, you shoot the master, and then you go in for close-ups and coverage. And then after that, you keep working. And if you're not in a scene, you go back to your trailer or your honey wagon or whatever room you have, and you do whatever you're going to do for the day. Especially during COVID, you're not allowed to walk around or hang out on the set.
Mm-hmm.
You go back to your room. Everything's very careful. There's no more eating lunch with everybody. So they bring you your lunch, or you bring it from home, and then you just work, and you go home. It's pretty easy. If you have prosthetics, obviously it's a lot different for people in sci-fi and stuff. But
I can't imagine somebody having prosthetics and having to.
It's not a job I would ever want to do again. I did not enjoy it. I can't sit still for 5 hours. I don't have the patience. Now, mind you, if it was some huge Spielberg film or something, sure, I'll wear prosthetics.
So, Stephen, if you're watching this someday,
That's right, Stephen. I'm not getting any younger. Still waiting for you. Phone's right here, ready to pick it up.
So, besides Babylon 5, what have been some of your favorite TV projects or film projects as well?
I loved doing the film Hexed, and I really enjoyed Clean and Sober. I loved working with Michael Keaton and Morgan Freeman. Television-wise, I really, really enjoyed doing the Highlander series, my own spin-off episode. That was amazing. I got to have medieval flashbacks and work with swords and horses. Recently, I've been on 911 as a recurring role, which has been, it's a fun character to play. I wish that I had more to do on the show, because it's sort of, exposition once in a blue moon. I did an episode of The Rookie recently, and it was such a tiny role. It's a role the size that I haven't done since I was a teenager. But in my opinion, work is work, and I enjoy working. So I basically say yes to anything if it's decent. It's a series. It was a tiny role, but it was so much fun. I played a waitress, and I got in a fight with a guy, and it was like, it was the silliest, stupidest thing. But there's a childlike enjoyment of being paid to go put on a costume and mess around for a couple of hours. It's very childlike and fun, and it reminds me of when I was a little girl putting on my Ramona the Pest outfit or my Annie wig, to do theater, and it harkens back to my love of performing and playing characters.
You can see it, because you can tell when somebody really enjoys what they're doing, how it just comes out. And watching you act, you can just tell, you just throw yourself into your roles.
Yeah, it's just fun. It's just fun to escape. And to think that, especially during COVID, to think of all the entertainment that has been provided. I know I did a Netflix series called Blood of Zeus. And at one point we were in the top 10 of Netflix, and I got such like a pouring of love from fans, because it was a diversion from life. So for 6 episodes, they were able to escape into this world of gods and goddesses and get involved with the storyline. And it just, I think it helped them get, because people have been really stressed out.
Yeah.
And I think entertainment has been a key component of keeping people slightly sane and happy.
That's very true. Yes. We've been trying to do the same thing here at the library, making all of our programming virtual. So.
Exactly. Well, people need that. There's a reliability of comfort in something familiar and escapism. We've been doing this since the beginning of mankind. We, escaped through art, through communication, through theater. So to be able to provide that during especially tumultuous times, you think back to World War II, how there were still performers performing in London as they were being bombed.
Yes.
There were still dancers on stage and people singing because people needed it. You need to celebrate life. And so if I can play a tiny part in that, of making someone forget about their troubles for a few hours, then you know what? I'm happy.
And we're happy too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch gears here for just a moment. In addition to being on film and TV, you're also an author.
Yes.
And we do have.
Oh yeah.
I might have to turn off the background for a moment.
No, that's okay. You just put it a little closer.
So we have Babylon Confidential.
Yep.
Which is your autobiography.
It was a memoir, yes, that I wrote after I found a solution for my alcohol misuse. And I really was excited about the method that I used. So I thought I better write a book and tell people about this, because to keep it to myself would be a very selfish thing to do.
Yeah, I remember when I first met you was at the Albuquerque Comic-Con, and you gave a talk on your experience. And that really moved me, because coming from this area, it's definitely a big problem here.
It's a huge problem in New Mexico. And I had been speaking to some of your political leaders and trying to get this method used in some of the reservations there, and certainly for Native Americans, and well, everybody. I mean, let's face it, it doesn't just affect one group. Everybody knows somebody who is adversely affected by alcohol misuse, whether it's a parent or a friend, or it's just somebody who needs to cut down, or somebody who's self-medicating, especially during the pandemic. Alcohol use disorder has risen in an incredibly destructive way, especially amongst women. And women are, have key roles in society. You're raising children, you're now trying to teach them at home. And if you're drinking 2 bottles of wine a night, it's really going to have a negative impact on everybody, your spouse, your children, their ability to learn, the stress levels in the house. So it's something that touches everybody. And I feel this intense need to reach as many people as possible and tell them about this really easy, affordable method that nobody's talking about, because it's really not something you can make money off of. So you have this counterintuitive thing of, it's not expensive rehab. You don't have to go to an expensive rehab. You don't have to get a patent, like a really expensive $1,000 a month shot or something like that. It's a generic tablet of medication that's innocuous in itself. It's a declassified medication. You can't get high off of it. You cannot get addicted to it. It's not a replacement medication or drug. So it's just this medication, which is an opiate antagonist, which has been found to undo addiction in the brain. But in a counterintuitive manner, you have to drink when you're doing this method. And so doctors are saying, how can I tell an alcoholic to drink? But the way around that is to say, listen, of course we want you to stay abstinent, but if you think you're going to drink, take a naltrexone 1 hour prior to the first drink of the day. So the method is that you take naltrexone 1 hour prior to the first drink of the day every time you drink. And that is a lifetime commitment if you continue to drink. But every single time you drink on naltrexone, your brain is unlearning the compulsive desire to drink more. In other words, it gives you an off button back. And that's what a lot of people who start losing control over their drinking, they lack that off button. So they're the last man or woman standing at the bar. They're the one that never switches to coffee or tea, who just keeps drinking and drinking and drinking until a lot of times they black out or pass out. And this is really dangerous for society.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's hugely, hugely detrimental to us. We spend over $250 billion a year in the US alone on alcohol misuse and its consequences. That's lost days of work, medical, DUIs, everything. then you also have the human cost of 100,000 lives. And here's the thing, it's preventative and it's treatable, but we don't treat it with anything medical. In this society, we just tell people to go to a meeting. You wouldn't tell somebody with leukemia to go to a meeting full of people with leukemia and talk about their leukemia.
Yeah.
That's not a treatment. It's a disease of the brain, and it's preventable and treatable. There are 6 medications right now that can treat alcohol use disorder. And you rarely hear people talking about medication-assisted treatment. So the method that I advocate is the one that I used, which is called the Sinclair Method, or TSM. Mm-hmm. And this is based on the work of an American researcher named John David Sinclair. And Dr. Sinclair moved to Finland in the 1980s to study a breed of rats that were alcoholic. And that's where he discovered this ability to use an opiate blocker with the rats and give them access to alcohol. And he found that they didn't want the alcohol after a period of time when they had this opiate blocker in them. So it's it's like Pavlov's dog in reverse. So every time you take a drink and your brain is blocked with naltrexone, you unlearn that behavior. So every time you drink, you want it less and less and less, until the point where you literally look at a glass of alcohol and go, I'd rather have sparkling water or a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. So it's that meh. And what it's doing is it's blocking the reinforcement from alcohol. And every time you drink, it blocks the reinforcement. By the way, it works for gambling too, which is a huge issue amongst Asian Americans and a lot of groups of individuals that have a lot of shame around it. Mm-hmm. There are lots of chronic gamblers out there that need help, and they can use naltrexone for that as well. It's in the same area of the brain. Makes sense. Yeah.
So this has been your passion as of late. That's why you formed the C3 Foundation.
Correct. I wrote that book in 2012, and then I started C3 Foundation, 2010, I think. And then C3 Foundation came around in 2013. I started that. And then I made a movie, One Little Pill, which is a documentary about the Sinclair Method, which is I must say, it's a great documentary. And anybody who wants a super easy way to show their family this method or to watch it for themselves, you can, if you have an Amazon Prime membership, it's free. It's just called One Little Pill, or you can go to the website onelittlepillmovie.com and rent it for a couple of dollars, which is then put back into my nonprofit foundation. And that I made that film specifically for the loved ones of people suffering from AUD, so that they can watch that and understand the science behind TSM. Because a lot of people will say, wait a minute, this method involves drinking, then it's an excuse to drink. But it's not an excuse to drink. Studies have proven that if you take naltrexone with abstinence, it is not nearly as effective as taking it, waiting an hour, and then engaging in the behavior you want to decrease or stop, in this case, drinking. Mm-hmm. So doing it using naltrexone in a targeted manner is far more effective than taking it and just not doing anything, not drinking.
We also have the film here at the library.
Oh, good. So people can take it out and watch it. Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. Well, thank you. You actually gave it to us.
Oops.
Oh. Yeah, you provided it to us. So.
Oh, good. I said. Sometimes I forget.
Yeah, that's okay. I was very grateful for it, though.
Good.
So your other books, I know you have a fiction book that you wrote, which we don't have yet.
I have a couple. One that I wrote with my writing partner, Morgan Grant Buchanan. It's called Wolf's Empire, and it's Rome That Never Fell, with a kick-ass female protagonist, a Calaveras. And now we have a new young adult novel coming out next year, also from Tor Macmillan. And I have a book called, the original, that's a self-published book. The Misadventures of Miss Emma Bradford, a children's book that I wrote. And then, of course, my cookbook, Snack Hacks.
Yep, which I also have.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I did that because over the years, people know that I love to cook, and I'm always kind of, I wouldn't say bitching at, but I give my fans a hard time because a lot of them eat really unhealthy food, especially at conventions. I'll see people with all this fast food and junk and everything. And here I am with my home packed, stuff that I went to the market when I got to the convention, my own food. And so people were always saying, well, why don't you make a cookbook? And I have done so many video games and provided the voices for so many games that I decided to combine my love of cooking easy, quick food and proving to fans that you don't need a lot of money or time to do this. And then I chose Mark Michael, who is a good friend of mine, who's also a huge gaming individual. He has cerebral palsy, so he's relegated to his apartment for long periods of time, especially when the weather is inclement in Pennsylvania. So, so he games a lot. He's a gamer. And so he's sort of a gaming expert, and we joined forces to put some recipes together and tie them in with games and provide really easy meals for people to make it, and also people with any sort of physical disabilities as well. Because Mark knows very well that, it's difficult if you have a physical disability sometimes to chop a lot of things or mince a lot of things. So we tried to make a lot of recipes that were more accessible to people.
I think that very much comes across in this book, because I'm not a very good cook myself, but I did try a few of the recipes here, and I thought they came out really well.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. Well, that's the most important thing, is that people just dip in and try some. There was a time when the book first came out that I kept getting photos from people who had made the recipes, and it just filled my heart with so much joy. There was even a German gamer that like a professional chef that made a few of the recipes, and they just looked so beautiful. So I was really, really happy about that. So I enjoyed doing that. It's not an easy process. I recently shot a bunch of cooking classes with Patricia Tallman from Babylon 5.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she helped me produce them, and she filmed them with her partner, Glenn. And that will be coming out probably in a few months, I would hope. And those will be really succinct, easy classes of just learning how to not waste food and how to make really fast, easy meals that are healthy and cost effective. That's important, especially now. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite recipe from the cookbook?
Well, I love anything seafood, so probably the ceviche, the tostadas and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Tostadas, yeah, the shrimp ones and all that. Any of the tuna recipes. I love fish. My writing partner Mark isn't a huge fish fan, so he's more of the chicken guy. Excuse me.
How did you end up collaborating with him in the first place?
He was a big Babylon 5 fan, and we just started to become pen pals. And then from pen pals, we met once in Philadelphia at a convention. And I guess, I don't know, I just became pen pals with him, and he had email pals. He had a specific, quite a few specific talents. He's a marvelous photographer, and he's just a very kind, generous person. And we would talk about food and cooking. What'd you make yesterday? What did you make? So I knew that we had a lot of things in common, and I knew that he could take a lot of photos of the food that he would make. Mm-hmm. So my boyfriend took a lot of the photos of my food, and then I had another photographer take some, and then I took some of my photos. So my photos are all sort of all over the place in the book, but Mark's are consistently Mark's photos. So you can really tell the difference. There's no uniform feeling about the book when it comes to the photos, but it was just our love of food and also helping people. He's just much like me, he feels like life is about giving back and helping people. And so I thought this book would really help people gain confidence in the kitchen and cook a little bit healthier for themselves and their loved ones. And that's all I wanted, was for people to understand that you don't, in the time that it takes for you to order a pizza, I can teach you how to make something really fast and delicious and much healthier and much more cost effective. And that was my whole point, was just give me 20 minutes and let me show you what you can do. And that's what I wanted people to understand. And I don't want people to throw away chicken carcasses and this and that when they can make beautiful stock out of it and then make soup out of it, and all these things that people just waste. And it's insulting to the animal as well. I find it's just, I don't like the idea of an animal losing its life and then you throw away all the bones and with meat on it and everything. And it's like, come on, man, that's disrespectful. You could really make a beautiful soup out of that, or stock, stew, or, so that was my impetus behind doing the book.
Well, I think my next venture is going to be the soups in here, because I was looking at them earlier and I'm like, why didn't I try those yet? Good.
Well, just take any chickens that you have, any bones or anything, put them in a stock pot with some celery, carrot, little trimmings from onions, make a nice stock, and then make a soup out of it. It's always better to use your own homemade stock. I keep them in the freezer in plastic containers or bags, even Ziploc bags. I just put the stock in there, get the air out, and put it in the freezer flat. And then you always have your own homemade stock for all recipes, for pastas, for everything. I make fish stock. When I used to eat meat, I would make a beef stock. If I had lamb, I'd make a lamb stock. So I have a freezer full of, and if I'm lucky enough to have shellfish like lobster or crab, I always save the shells and make a stock, because that makes the best, bouillabaisse or jambalaya or shrimp etouffee. Yeah, well, if you make jambalaya or shrimp etouffee out of a shrimp stock, it's going to taste so much better, as opposed to just pouring in some store-bought chicken stock, which is full of chemicals and crap.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And it doesn't take that much to save your vegetable trimmings. When you peel a carrot, you just put it in a plastic bag and throw it in the freezer. And then you keep building that up, and that's your stock bag. And then you just throw all that stuff in with a chicken carcass, and boom, you got stock. 3 hours later, but still.
So before we run out of time, I wanted to play a little game called This or That.
Okay.
So it's just a bunch of this or that. What would you prefer?
I have to choose either this or that?
So I'll give you two options and you choose which one. It's kind of going to be like a rapid fire.
Okay.
So I have 7 questions.
Okay.
Ready?
Ready.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Hot bath or a hot shower?
Neither. Warm, not hot.
Oh, okay, warm.
Bath.
Marvel or DC?
What was it?
Marvel or DC?
Ooh. I can't choose. Marvel. I don't know.
Mexican food or Italian food?
Oh, that's so hard. That's so unfair. I'll have to take. I live in Southern California. Oh God, if I could only have one, I guess I'd have to go with Italian.
Okay, I would go with Italian too, and I'm Hispanic, so.
I love Mexican food, but there's, okay.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Morning.
Yeah, I'm a morning person for sure.
Okay, this one's really important. Okay. Best commanding officer, Sinclair or Sheridan?
Oh boy. I'm gonna have to go with Sheridan, because he was around longer and he was allowed to complete his complete arc as a character. And so we really saw the changes from season 2 when he arrived as Howdy Doody to the season 5 when he went off as the grizzled, Patton kind of guy. So that was definitely a complete arc.
I actually got to meet him a year after you went to Albuquerque Comic-Con.
Oh, Bruce?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's lovely.
Yeah, he was a great guy. I enjoyed him.
Very, very nice guy. I really adore him.
But that was a trick question. The real answer is Ivanova.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was gonna say. I thought you were gonna say Kosh. I definitely think, yes, of course, I'm always going to vote for Ivanova because Ivanova is God. So,
Okay, and last question. If you could have any superpower, what would that superpower be?
I would be able to speak every language in the entire world so I could communicate with every human being in their own tongue.
Oh, that's beautiful. I like that. I think that's the best answer I've ever heard from that question.
It's something that I fantasize about a lot.
So a universal translator, like in person.
I would be able to speak to anybody in any language. Yes, that would be my superpower, and I would be immensely happy. I would be just wandering the world talking to people.
That's great. Well, again, I want to thank you for being able to do this interview for us and for participating in our Authors Festival.
It's my pleasure. I'm just I'm happy to encourage people to read and to explore their local libraries. I think it's wonderful. I know that as a child, I spent an inordinate amount of time taking books out of a library, and it meant the world to me to have that access to books.
Thank you again, and you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope everything goes well for you.